Under a proposed bill in New York State, landlords would be unable to evict tenants unless they had a good cause. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over a good cause bill that they're trying to pass up in the city of Ithaca in New York State. So if you haven't heard of this before, and I have covered this in a video before, basically it takes the landlord's rights away from them by making it so the tenant always has the right to renew their lease. Even if you don't want that tenant in there anymore, even if you want to use the property for a different reason, doesn't matter. If you want to fix the property up and charge a higher rent, you can't do it, okay? If that tenant wants to renew, and pretty much the only way you can get them out is if you have this very small, narrow number of exceptions that allows you to actually remove that tenant. So it's really, really bad for landlords, these good cause laws. And, I can't believe that more cities are even trying to pass them because they're just not good for landlords. They're not good for property owners, and they especially hurt small landlords. But before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think of these good cause laws. Do you think they're a good idea? Do you think that this is actually going to help make it easier for tenants to have affordable housing? I don't, okay? I think it's going to make it harder, a lot harder, because now, once again, you're putting another restriction on landlords. You're making it harder for us to remove tenants, and that means that we're only going to screen and put in the absolute best possible applicants, the ones who we know are going to pay us and who we know are going to be great tenants. And everyone else who might have been a little questionable, who we might have let in the property before, well, they're not even going to have a chance, okay? So I think it's a bad idea. I think it's going to make things a lot worse for a lot of these, lower income tenants. But anyway, this article, it's coming to us from Ithaca.com, and it says, public scrutinizes good cause eviction legislation at committee level. And let's see what they're saying about this, okay? The Planning and Economic Development Committee faced a lively public comment section at its October 20th meeting after changes were made to the good cause eviction or right to renew legislation ahead of the meeting. The exact language changes depending on who's speaking, though the spirit of the bill remains the same. The committee has been discussing this legislation, which would introduce additional tenant protections, for the past couple of months. Originally introduced by the Ithaca Tenants Union, the legislation has since been tweaked to closer resemble the legislation passed recently in Albany. It would protect tenants from losing their homes by guaranteeing them the option to renew their lease, except under specific circumstances, such as non-payment of rent. It also aims to protect tenants from retaliation by landlords due to things like demanding repairs or organizing with other tenants. Well, here's the thing, okay? They create all these laws with the intent of helping the tenants, and they put landlords in a bad situation when they do this. And I think what they're thinking is, oh well, we're going to go after these big dogs with all this money, okay? So, not every landlord is super wealthy. Not every landlord can deal with these sort of issues, can deal with all of the different rules and regulations and everything that these cities, they throw on landlords. You have a few bad players, a very, very small minority of landlords. I'd say less than 1% are not doing things, up to snuff, okay? They're not doing things according to the law, or they are, bending the rules to get by. And then the other 99%, they are following the rules. They're good landlords. They're providing good places to live that are clean and safe and affordable for the people who they're renting to. And guess what, though? When you pass these laws and you're targeting the 1% of landlords who are doing things wrong, the other 99% all have to suffer under those same rules, okay? You made them so broad that it makes it so that all the other landlords are suffering. And that's why I'm so against all of these super pro-tenant, anti-landlord laws, because you're punishing a ton of really good landlords with ridiculous rules that don't make any sense, like this. Okay, so just imagine you're a smaller landlord and you have a tenant in your property who you just don't get along with. Okay, the tenant, they pay their rent, but maybe they just have a bad attitude, and they cuss at you, they treat you like crap, and you're like, well, I don't want to renew the tenant for another year because him and I don't get along. Well, you can't do that. That tenant has more rights to your property than you do as the property owner, according to these good cause laws, okay? Because they would consider that not a good cause. Not getting along with your tenant isn't a good enough cause. That is ridiculous, okay? However, prior to the meeting, Councilmember Cynthia Brock made changes to the bill that drew the ire of many in the public comment. Unfortunately, some of the changes really destroyed the intent of the legislation, resident Teresa Alt said. Resident Randall Frank echoed that and said, in the bill's current form, all protections are gone. It seems to me that the substantive improvements in the September version were eviscerated, he said. It undermines all the meaningful protections of the most vulnerable people whose interests are being represented here. So I kind of wonder what exactly were the changes. Maybe it says further on in this article, because it sounds like one of the council members kind of just ripped this thing apart, maybe made it a little less punishing towards landlords and a little bit less friendly towards tenants. But let's see what it says. Genevieve Rand, a leader with the Ithaca Tenants Union and a driving force behind this legislation, said she took issue with changes to the lease renewal timeline and other new good causes for eviction in the bill. This version of the bill is quite dramatically different from the version that was circulated last month, she said. Literally, the whole point of this law is so a non-renewal notice can't exist without a tenant's consent, unless the landlord takes them to court to prove they broke a rule. If you sign a year contract, how can you evaluate that contract 2 months in? The building sale thing, the inspection refusal thing, all of this was thrown in with one sweeping move without a public session like this. This version of the bill doesn't do any of the intentions of the good cause legislation. It needs to be thrown out and reverted to the September bill. It sounds like these tenants aren't very happy with the changes that were made, but let's see if the article actually says what these changes were, because I'm a little bit confused right now. Rand was referencing a few substantive changes made by Brock in the latest version of the bill. Currently, the city's code requires landlord to wait 60 days before offering a lease renewal to a tenant. However, they can include a waiver to those 60 days in the lease agreement. Many renters unknowingly waive this 60-day waiting period and end up signing lease renewals shortly into their current lease before getting the chance to evaluate their living situation. Brock suggested eliminating this waiver allowance, meaning landlords will be required to wait the 60 days before offering a renewal lease, and then a tenant would have 45 days to negotiate and accept the renewal lease or indicate they will not be renewing, totaling 105 days. Rand and others during public comment argued this was not enough time to evaluate if the living situation was a good one. Wow, so yeah, it sounds like they're... I'm a little bit confused by it, but let me see if I can figure this out for the people watching this video. Okay, so they give them a couple of months basically in order to decide if they want to renew their lease or not. And the people who are angry or mad that they say it's just not enough time to make that sort of decision. So okay, honestly, I don't believe that's, I don't like the lease renewal law either way. That seems a little bit ridiculous to me, but, this is New York State. Things are different outside of that state, so. Rand also referenced the building sale thing, which refers to the section Brock added that allows a landlord to terminate a lease for the purpose of sale or renovation. The Tenants Union had previously argued against the sale of a building as a good cause for eviction. Brock did include a relocation assistance requirement for building sale lease terminations that would require landlords to provide 1 month's rent for a tenant household paying rent greater than fair market rent, plus the full repayment of the security deposit. If a tenant is paying rent equal to or less than fair market rent, they would receive 2 months' rent and full repayment of the security deposit. Okay, so let me dive into that paragraph there. So the tenants are mad because the landlords, one of the good causes for eviction is that if the landlord's going to be able to sell their property or if they want to renovate the property, then they need to be able to get the tenant out of there. So they consider that to be a good cause. The tenants don't want that to be a good cause, and there's some kind of argument going on over that. But when it comes down to it, to me, okay, the landlord shouldn't have to justify whether, they're doing a renovation, whether they're selling, whether they don't get along with their tenants, whether the tenant's not paying, whatever the reason. If the landlord does not want to renew their lease, they shouldn't be forced to with a tenant that they don't want in their property. Okay, so that's why I don't like this law, in any form that they put this law through, even if the modified form that the tenants don't 100% agree with still is bad for landlords. Okay, and that's the whole reason that I can't agree with any of this stuff. Okay, so let's hope that this sort of law doesn't start extending to other parts of the country, because it's bad news. Okay, it's bad news for us, and it will make things worse for the tenants as well.